All right. Good morning. So this is day 2. I wanted to do a lot more filming yesterday. I couldn't because we were just kind of running out of time for the suspension installation. But we've got a lot done. We got a lot done. And it was like, I mean, for me, 11 hours, 12 hours working on this. But basically, quick rundown. We're doing OEM style rear coilovers. However, we've got the SPL / nismo rear buckets that are adjustable, and that's them. And we had to get different Swift springs because my plan was to use the Swift springs I got on the coilovers with the perches, but they're different sizes. The diameter is like 60 millimeters instead of 65. So I'm gonna have mismatched colored springs, which I really don't care about. But we did 9K in the rear and 12K front. So with the adjustable buckets, that means we don't need to use these perches from Fortunato, which is nice. I hope it's not too low because I'm all the way at max height on those buckets and we haven't laid them down yet. What I want to do is set the car down just on springs with no dampers and set the ride height that way and at least get a good look before I set the droop travel with the rear shocks, which are down here. In other news, we still have to try and figure out if the jam nut is seized or not on my outer tie rod. But to give you some perspective, this is where we're at on the inside. So you'll notice we did the coilover. I have the Z1 forged upper control arms. I don't have very good line of sight on how to set these. So I basically put a level on the edge of the wheel hub and just checked it that way. I know once I set the car down, it's gonna get sucked up inside of there. And then we have to cross-check all of our fasteners and make sure everything's tight. And then I'm going to hopefully find a place to align the car tomorrow. So we got the new hardware in. This was a nightmare to get out. Hopefully I can do the inner and outer tie rod here because I have the kit. I have replacement inner tie rods and I have the SPL bump steer outer. I did an oil change yesterday. Let's take a look under the car though. It's pretty clean overall. This is what the Army Tricks exhaust looks like. Cat back all the way down. It's 3-inch, and then you have like 14-inch resonators at the back. And then it goes out to the regular suitcase style muffler. It just has like one of those Valvetronic actuators, so you can kind of adjust it. So hopefully I didn't fuck everything up. Really, we're only gonna try and go down about a 1/2 inch all the way around. This is a lot of fucking parts to just go down a 1/2 inch, but I wanted to do it right. One thing about the upper control arms, if you're gonna do control arms, whether they're Z1 or not, when you hook them up, you kind of want them at the middle of their travel point when you torque them down. That way they have good articulation both directions. So I did my best to do that. The other thing that was a nightmare was the rear. It took us a long time because we had to take the mid links out and replace them with these Nismo mid links. But let's take a look under here and I'll show you what's what. Ow, if I don't hit my head. Ooh. Okay, here we are. So this guy right here is a traction arm. And this should be adjustable as well once you loosen the lock nuts a little bit. And you have to reuse this bolt and spin it back on there. There's a spacer behind it. I'll see if I can get in there. I know the light sucks, but see that spacer right there? That's critical to put the spacer on there for this. And then, so traction rod, camber arm right here. Same situation. Just loosen those and you should be able to spin this guy forwards and backwards to actually push the camber out because it's actuating the fuck, I'm so tired, you guys. It's actuating the rear wheel assembly. And then I know it's the Nismo is written upside down. the reason I installed this way is to get all of these adjustment nuts facing down, because it would be a nightmare to try and get above this bar with tools to loosen up the adjusters. And even if I flip this around, this would be right side up and the matching side would be upside down anyway. So to me, I really don't give a shit. I'm never going to see this thing. But for quick adjustments, I'd rather have all this stuff nearby. So you can see we did the Z1 eccentric lockout kit. One thing Z1 didn't do is mark, if you're buying a bunch of suspension parts all together, the long eccentric bolts and the short eccentric bolts, because there are two eccentric adjustments. One is on the mid-link for the toe, and obviously the other one's on the camber arm right here. So we got rid of the lobed eccentric bolt and we replaced all that. The other challenge is trying to fit a tool through the spring so you can actually loosen the rear sway bar adjustment. The front was much easier to do than the rear. And then obviously what you want, this isn't perfect, but you want as close to center on this bushing as you can get, because this actually rocks side to side here. And you don't want them torqued all the way over to one side. So that took a fucking long time to adjust and readjust and readjust. And this is spun up pretty tight for the rear sway bar. I mean, there's a lot of preload in this for the rear, but anyway, a lot of 17 millimeter and 19 millimeter offset stuff, which is kind of poopy. I wish it was all the same. Anyway, let's go back under the car a little bit. So there's the resonators for the exhaust. It's pretty clean overall. I'm not a big fan of the Valvetronic stuff. It's kind of a gimmicky thing to me. I really don't like the suitcase style muffler that you see there that's following the back of the bumper. I like the true dual setup that I used to have. It is droney and it is loud if you go true dual, but whatever. So why go through all the effort of doing a entire suspension transplant and leave the factory sway bar? Because it's a Nismo, and this appears to be much larger than the sports that I've worked on, and I don't think I really need it, but we'll see. I think the Z1 adjustable preload and links are going to be good enough to get as much out of this fucking sway bar as I can get. So that's that. Otherwise, that took so long because we don't have a lift. It took a really fucking long time to dial all this stuff in and get it right. Like you can see on the other end of the mid-link, I have the same like FK style bearing and on. You can see the spring is not under any kind of load in the cup here. And this is fucking pretty close to as far up as I can get it. So obviously when the car and the weight compress on it, we're gonna get some contact, and I just wanna see how I can set the height. And then ideally what you wanna do, well 100% what you wanna do once you get the height dialed in on the back, is go ahead and install your shocks and allow the preload to kind of take up the spring a little bit. So you want the spring always under tension. So this way, if the car unloads the weight, going around a corner over a bump or something, and you have no load on this and it articulates down, that shock will give you a stopping point before the spring has no pressure and it may pop out of the back. So you gotta be a little careful. You gotta get this right. And I think rather than adjusting the strut in front of the shock, I'm just gonna set, the shock in front of the spring. I'm just gonna set this on the spring and just dial the ride height in on spring pressure only, and then lift the car back up and set the droop travel and the shocks to be where they need to go. So the other thing we're gonna do, which is the only like significant fabrication mod to the car, is, you can see my garage is a fucking nightmare. At the top of the shock tower, what pokes through are these adjustments, But inside the car, in the back, you have to, right here, to set your damping, you have to take this all the way out of the car and adjust the damping and put it back in. So what I'm going to do is drill holes in the top and put a grommet in there so it covers the hole, and just poke an extender, this extender through. So it's going to look like this. So where I make the hole, I'm going to set the grommet in there and poke this out. So that way I can just reach into the back of the car and just set my damping through this extension that will be attached to a shock like that. So these are the shortest extenders they make. I want to say they were 7-inch extenders from Fortunato, and I like them a lot. But they're so tall in the back of the car, if you just go straight up, I think it's going to hit the glass. So what I'm probably going to do is have the extender come up out of the shock tower, and before I drill a hole, I'm actually going to bend it that way and drill a hole out of the back of the shock tower and just curl that cable in an elbow fashion. So I can just reach into the back and adjust from here, and it will actually twist the damping adjustment on the top of the shock. That's the idea. If I don't want to put holes in it last minute, I just throw them in there how they are. And if I need to change the damping adjustment, I put the car up and take the shock out, adjust the damping, don't tune any of the other settings, and put the shock right back in. So that's it. That's the last install piece we have to do, besides potentially trying those inner and outer tie rods one last time. I have a tie rod pulling tool over there on the bench. And that's it. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to check the torque specs and adjust everything, tighten everything down, all the lock washers, all the stuff that we installed. And I'm going to set the car down for the first time in a little bit and see how we did on the height. I think it's going to be super fucked up and wonky. I am really nervous about the camber, caster, and toe settings because I had very little reference points other than I didn't take the tie rod out. So the rack and pinion is still where it needs to be adjusted to how it is, and I put everything else around it. So I might be closer than I think, but realistically, I got to take this in for a full adjusted alignment all the way around. So it was a long night yesterday. My body's really sore. I've been laying on the ground all day, wrenching on stuff, and highly, highly, highly customizable adjustments, which means installation is always kind of tough because things kind of wriggle around and move, and you know, you're dealing with a bunch of different pieces and stuff. I really wanted to film each of these and give you like, oh, and this is the, you know, torque spec and the nut setting, but I'll try to aggregate that, see if I come back with another video. But I might not. I might just roll with this. But I wanted to show you that we're doing this. We're keeping the divorce rear end architecture. A couple reasons for that. Number one, I wanted to not beat up the shock towers because I think putting all of the exterior weight of the car, the pressure, the load around corners and all that, just pounding all that weight onto one small piece of sheet metal instead of just putting the damper where it is. It wasn't designed that way, so I was a little nervous. If you're wondering, just to ease your mind and settle some debates, are these Nismo rear ends reinforced? I don't think I have a light. Maybe that's still plugged in. Let's grab the light. Are they reinforced where you don't have to worry about it? The answer is yep. There's an extra plate of metal up there that sandwiches over the original sheet metal plate, and it kind of is reinforced. So, you know, do you want to run all that weight and drive the car hard and cause problems beating the shit out of the shock tower with not just the shock, but also the full ass weight of the car? I mean, that's up to you. You see guys with BMWs with those thin sheet metal bodies that go true dual coilovers and just pound the shit out of the tops of where the strut caps are, or the mount caps. I didn't want to be that guy. I like the divorced architecture. I think the ratio for adjustment is 1.7 to 1, which means 1 inch of height adjustment equals 1.7 at the tire because the springs are inboard. And that's because of the pivot angle, because you have two different pieces, right? So is it easier to run true duals? Yes. Is it way easier? Totally way easier. but I would still get all the supporting mods. I would have just done a traction arm instead of those mid links. Still would have run a camber arm, still would have run, you know, traction camber and tow arm instead of the mid link. So we'll see. I'm gonna start tightening all the fasteners down and all the lock washers down. I'm gonna double check all the torque specs for everything. And once I feel comfortable there, I'm gonna set it down without shocks and try and dial in the height. And when I feel like it's close, I'm gonna set absolute bottom on the shock, and I'm gonna install the shock. And then we'll do one last check and we should be good to go. And again, it's mostly just so I don't have to fight an extra piece and that my shock is not over traveling so much while I'm doing the adjustments here. Worst case scenario, if those don't work, I'm gonna put the original mid-link back in the car and I'm gonna have to run an eccentric bolt. The good news is I still have a coilover rear end, right? I still have the matching Swift springs at 60 millimeters. I have the bottom cups that those sit into, the aluminum fastening cups. I can bend out those tabs for the top plate of those mid links back down and throw that rubber cone under there and use the perches. So then I'm only really out, you know, $200 worth of Swift springs with ID 65 or 65 millimeter diameter to fit that. And I would be out about, what I got those on sale, like about 900 bucks, about $1,000 on mid links, the Nismo ones. And I can just sell them and be like, here you go. So if you're like me and you think, hey, I'm gonna get an aftermarket setup, I'm gonna keep the OEM style divorced spring and shock on the rear, and I'm gonna use whatever rear coilover coils come with my set and just throw them in there instead of having to buy extra springs that are mismatching in color. Check the sizes because you need the 2.5 inch, I think it's 2.56 inch spring diameter or ID 65 mm. And if you're like me and you bought Fortunatos with Swift upgrades, those Swift springs are 60 millimeters. So just keep that in mind. Those springs will 100% not fit in those cups. I tried. Huge shout out to Fortunato for doing some troubleshooting with me, because I called them and asked them about, you know, hey, do I even need your perches because I'm using this adjustment bottom? I don't think I do. And they said, no, you're right. You don't need to do that. Hey, by the way, the springs are probably not going to fit. So call SPL, because in case you didn't know, the Nismo version of that mid-link is built by SPL. And I was like, well, fuck, there you go. So huge shout out to Fortunato for helping me, going the extra mile and bringing that to my attention, or I would have been like assuming that a 5 millimeter difference wouldn't have mattered on those cups. It absolutely does. So thank you, Fortunato, for that. So I am going to be running half of a Fortunato kit, and the other half is going to be sort of a Frankenstein of my own build. And if I hate all this, I'll just go true dual, because now I feel I can safely run true dual rears. Is it my favorite? No. Am I still worried about it? A little bit. This car is not super duper heavy. It's the heaviest one they made because it's the Nismo Tech, but it's not like I'm doing time attack in the car where I'm beating and beating and beating and beating the shit out of it. So there you have it. This is what the other side looks like. I think my toe, my camber, and my caster are really, really bad. And I would love to get that close to zero. And if there's a mobile alignment shop in Las Vegas, I might call them and have them come to me just to make sure I don't drive this too far and fuck up my tires or something worse. So anyway, big project, huge fucking project. I am so glad my buddy Paul's here helping me, because this would have taken me weeks to do alone. We did actually all of this plus an oil change, which I did before he got up yesterday, in about 11 hours. So take your time. If you like the divorced rear, I'll keep you posted on whether or not I think is a good idea long term, and lots of work. But if you're going to lower the car, in my opinion, save up, get all the supporting modifications for it, traction arms, camber arms. In my case, because I got the adjustable ones all from SPL, I decided to do the eccentric bolt lockout kit. I like not having eccentric bolts to tune that stuff. I would rather have precise adjustments that never slip. once you set them. So I'm good to go there. I'm going to put the factory strut tower cap bar back in there, and we're going to set it down and dial the ride height here in just a few minutes. So that's the update on the Z. I'm sorry I couldn't film everything one by one. It was taking way too long, but hopefully kind of a high level overview is good for you, and I'll keep you. Whew. All right, final entry into the suspension saga, and a super huge shout out first and foremost to my buddy Paul for all your help. Couldn't have done this without you. Certainly not in the frame of time we were able to pull it off. Big shout out to Fortunato for hooking it up and helping me with the rear springs, the diameters, and making sure that I didn't fuck this project up. And so got it hooked up with some Swift springs. And then also finally for the alignment, massive shout out to Kaiju Motorsports in Henderson, Nevada. They were super nice, super professional, really great guys. Talked me through the use case of the car a lot, talked me through optimal settings, found out where we could get close to what I wanted, and oops, I killed the camera. Anyway, shout out to Kaiju. They helped me figure out optimal settings, get me straightened out. So here we go. There she is. It is about a ½ inch down, which is exactly what I wanted. I did end up taking some of the rake out of the car. So we're not monster trucking, but we are also not slammed on our ass, because I really wanted to maintain drivability for the car. So I know the wheels kind of turned a little bit, but camber looks pretty good. So let's take a look at the before and the after. So this is our before and after. Oh look, it's exhausting heat out of the engine bay, just like I want. Dude, you could roast a fucking hot dog right there on that. It's crazy. So Paul and I got the front and the rear pretty close. We're 0.21 degrees off in the front, 0.13 for steer ahead angle, and then 0.36 in tow, which is not ideal. So we had to get that fixed. So we went from a thrust angle of 0.8 degrees down to a thrust angle of 0.01. That's as close, I think, as you can get. Tow, we're, what, 0.3 of a degree, which is nice. Spot on in the rear, spot on in the front on tow. We are running, we went from 3 degrees of camber down to just about 2, and then we flattened our caster out to basically 6 degrees. So we're kind of on the high end of the caster, which is okay. It's just going to make the steering wheel snap out of your hand even further. Yep. So that's our measurements. 0.09 toe left front, 0.10 toe right front, 0.14 and 0.15 left and right rear respectively. We are flat on steer ahead with almost 0.2 of a degree of toe. Looks like out, but look at that spec line. Let's see if the camera can. The wind is blowing it. It's right in the dead center of spec, though. I'm pretty happy with that. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm excited with that. So it feels good. You let go of the wheel and it drives straight. It looks mildly better than it did, not tons better for aesthetics, but drivability is really nice. I'm really excited. I still have a little bit of a creaking in the front, so I think this weekend I'm basically going to readjust the preload, and I'm probably going to grease the front spherical bearings up top. Really, the rest is just dialing in the damping settings. I think it's a touch on the stiff side, and it's right in the middle, so I might knock it down a few clicks all the way around. If not, at least the fronts. So that's it. Massive shout out, like I said, to Kaiju, to Fortunato, and most importantly to my buddy Paul. Thank you. This was not an easy task, and we did it. And one more look around the car. Let's just cruise around the outside. So she's a little flatter, a little less of a rake angle, which I thought I would probably hate, but to be fair with you, it does make life a little easier to see out of the back of the car. So when it squats under load, it's gonna basically be perfectly flat. Yes, sir. So we can officially say that we're basically done with drivability modifications, plus minus, getting new wheels, and forced induction. So I'm stoked. Like I said, sorry I didn't get all of the piece by piece installation guide the way I wanted to. Instead, we just did a big overview. But to be honest with you, I was running out of time, and you can kind of download a factory service manual or Google any of the torque specs or, you know, size of nut and bolt that you have to pull out and all that stuff. So that's it. Suspension done. See you guys.